Thank you so much, Julie. And hello, everyone. Welcome to Amsterdam. So nice to see you from all over the world. Many people from the United States. I saw some people from a bit closer, Belgium, even Amsterdam, or people that said they have parents there. Well, for now, we're going to be in Amsterdam for an hour, and I'm really happy that Julie invited me to speak to you about Amsterdam. A bit sad that it's only for an hour because I could speak about Amsterdam for 24 hours. But yeah, but let's start with one and see how it goes and take it from there. I'm gonna bring you quickly into the program. And if you feel that I'm a little bit sore in my throat, a bit sniffy, it's because I contracted COVID about 7 days ago. I'm already getting better. I had a serious flu for a few days. I'm still a bit slow, feeling a bit slow, but good enough to start our presentation. Our journey of Jewish Amsterdam, a small community with a giant history. And I'm excited. Let's go. Let's go. Going to also add a nice red light for you. Very typical for Amsterdam. Here we go. So these are some things that we're going to be talking about possibly today. We got, of course, a map of Amsterdam, so you know where it is. In the middle of the Netherlands, we also call it Holland. Sometimes after the two main provinces of this country, we use them interchangeably. We're next to England and Germany and Belgium. There is parks named after Jews that you can see, some beautiful synagogues from Amsterdam, a beautiful library. There's Spinoza, who went viral recently. You see some Amsterdam politicians, of course, Anne Frank, some Jewish buildings. These are some things that typify Jewish Amsterdam. And these are some events, recent and in the past. And we're gonna show you through this. Of course, everyone has his mind on Ukraine. I just want to share this. This was yesterday at the Dam Square, also in Amsterdam. A lot of people are feeling for the community there. You see some Israeli flags, and there's also a lot of Jewish initiatives to support at least the Jewish community in Ukraine, which is amongst one of the biggest in Europe. So before I start, I think there are three key thoughts that I would like you to take from our presentation today. The three things that I think you should definitely know. First of all, and I'm going to show that to you, Jewish Amsterdam was once the center of the Jewish world. I think it's really nice to know that and to take that from today. Then Jewish Holland still has a very rich cultural and religious tradition. And also Jewish Holland is still fighting the effects of the World War today. And we're not sure if we're gonna make it actually. Those are three things that are, I think, very essential for the Dutch Jews. And the second part, the rich cultural and religious tradition, it also still has a very big impact on the Netherlands as it is today. So we're gonna see all that. I'm gonna explain to you how the first Jews actually came to the Netherlands and how they lived here. I'll tell you a bit about Spinoza because everyone always likes talking about Spinoza. I'm going to tell you a bit about how the Dutch Jews influenced the Dutch Republic and the Jewish world. I'm going to speak a little bit about World War II, but not too much. And I'm going to address today's Jewish community to give you an idea what's going on here. We may have time for anti-Semitism. This is actually like a 3-hour lecture that we're going to do in one. So I'm not completely sure about that, but we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers afterwards. And if it's not enough, I hope Julie invites me back and you can always send me an email. Okay, here we go. A little introduction about me. This is me. I'm 2 years old here and I'm wearing, we say it's a tablecloth, but I think it's a skirt, as a talit, as a prayer cloth, pretending to be a chazan, pretending to be a cantor. And I really wanted to be a chazan for a really long time. I saw my father do that, and my grandfather and my uncle. So yeah, this is still me. I think I'm 34. When I made this presentation the first time. I just turned 35. My father is Portuguese Jewish, and my mom is Ashkenazi. My dad's side of the family moved to Holland 400 years ago. I'm married to Alumit, who is resting right now, but she is here through this penguin that she created, that she made for us. His name is Spinny. He's Jewish, obviously, so she's there this way. I was raised in an Orthodox family, but like moderate Orthodox. It's like still chill and part of the world. And I started to be a chazan, well, when I was 2 years old, but I started doing prayers in synagogue actually from the age of 5. I was 7 when I did my first haftarah, so really I think this was my path all along. And I was the chazan in the big Portuguese synagogue that probably everyone knows in 2003. And for 12 years, I led all the synagogue services there, read the Torah. It was an hour and a half, walk to get there from here. 1 hour and a half and back. So 3 hours I would walk every Shabbat to lead services there to make sure that there was a service. And then after 12 years, I thought it was nuts to start something a bit closer to home. And then I started a community called Beni Gamos. I studied political science and I have a master's in European Union politics. I don't do much with it anymore. I used to work at the city council as a city councillor. I worked at the Israeli embassy. And actually, I'm running for city council in 2 weeks again in the Netherlands. So I'm still doing stuff with politics. I must say, working in the Jewish community, it's very helpful to know politics because everything is very politicized. So I can say it's very helpful actually. And now what I'm doing today is giving a lot of bar and bat mitzvah lessons. I'm the coordinator, that's my main job, for the Jewish seminary. So a lot of religious Jewish courses for adults we have there. And then I do tons of other stuff like running a synagogue, teaching. I make my own prayer books. I make books for anything with Jewish prayers or Hebrew prayers in it. I do that. I give tours. So you have an idea now. And on the right, you see our coat of arms. So really, my family can trace its history back a long time. This is from before the Inquisition. And here's a picture of me and my wife. So now you know who's talking to you and how I'm rooted in the community of the Netherlands. She's Ashkenazi, by the way, but that's fine. And she knows all our traditions by now. She's amazing. Also, some of my family does quickly. I have Chabad family. This is my uncle and a part of his children. He is 11. My grandparents are here. This is the brother of my grandfather, Portuguese Jewish, but was the main rabbi of the Ashkenazi community. This is his uncle. He was the chief rabbi of the Portuguese synagogue. He's sitting there right now. This is my father, who's running a tax advising company, doing really well. And my mom, she organizes events and a place where people can go when they have cancer and they need some support, and they can go to this place. And it's so pretty nice family. We're gonna do a quick video. In 2 minutes, you're gonna see a bit about the Portuguese synagogue, what I used to do there, and how the Jews ended up from Israel all the way up to Amsterdam in just 2 minutes. Here we go. Just check with Julie. Just show me your thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
Hoi, ik ben Nachshon. Welkom in de Portugese synagoge. Kortweg synagoge genoemd. De synagoge is gebouwd voor Joden die ooit uit Spanje en Portugal naar Amsterdam kwamen. Iedere week leid ik hier de diensten en geef ik les aan Joodse jongeren. Maar wat is Joods? En wat deden die Joden uit Spanje en Portugal eigenlijk in Amsterdam? Kijk, al die mensen op dit schilderij zijn net als ik Joods. Zo'n 3000 jaar geleden woonden onze voorouders aan de oostoever van de Middellandse Zee. Ze daalden wegens een hongersnood af naar Egypte, waar ze als slaven gevangen gehouden werden. Mozes, geboren als kind van slaven en opgegroeid aan het Egyptische hof, bevrijdde zijn volk en leidde het naar de woestijn. Daar krijgt Mozes van God de Torah, het eerste deel van de Hebreeuwse Bijbel, met de 10 geboden. En hij wijst het Joodse volk de weg naar het beloofde land. In Jeruzalem bouwen ze de tempel, een heiligdom voor God en zijn geboden. Maar in het jaar 70 verwoesten de Romeinen de tempel en verdrijven zij de Joden uit het land. Vanaf dat moment verspreiden Joden zich over de hele wereld. Waar ze ook wonen, ze houden zich aan de leefregels van de Torah en komen samen in synagogen. Zo leven Joden ook eeuwenlang in moslim-Spanje. Nadat katholieke koningen daar de macht overnemen, moeten Joden zich bekeren. Wie weigert, kon levend verbrand worden. In 1492 worden alle Joden uit Spanje verdreven. Velen vluchten naar Portugal, waar ze alsnog gedwongen worden gedoopt. Maar ook daar zijn ze als bekeerlingen hun leven niet zeker. Ze vluchten opnieuw, op zoek naar vrijheid. Rond 1600, het begin van de Gouden Eeuw, komen deze bekeerde Joden in Amsterdam aan. Het stadsbestuur van Amsterdam is geïnteresseerd in deze nieuwkomers. Het zijn kooplieden met internationale contacten. Ze mogen blijven. Hier kunnen ze weer als Joden leven. Alleen, hoe doe je dat ook alweer? Er komt een rabbijn naar Amsterdam om hen te helpen. Hij leert hen Hebreeuws, de taal van de Torah, en al snel vinden in zijn huis de eerste Joodse gebedsdiensten plaats. 70 jaar later zou hier de grote Portugese synagoge gebouwd worden.
Okay. Wow, that's how we ended up here.
Hoi.
And this is the synagogue on the right. On the left, you can see the Ashkenazi synagogue, and in between, there's water. Here's the other way around. And this is what it looks like today. This is a Portuguese synagogue. It attracts tens and tens of thousands of tourists and people, Jews, all over the world. So probably a lot of people here have been inside the synagogue. Maybe I've met some of you when I was leading services for 12 years. This is a Jewish historical museum. You can see the water is gone and it's now a very busy street. Actually, right here, right now, there's a new Holocaust memorial with all the names of the just over 100,000 Jews that were killed during the Second World War. And yeah, this is what it looks like right now. It's an amazing synagogue. And yeah, I'm very proud that it's part of our heritage. This is how we ended up here. This is our story. So the first Jews in the Netherlands were Portuguese Jews. There was some medieval Jewish presence, but it was very difficult. It didn't last long. Also, the Netherlands was just a swamp back then. So why did they go to the Netherlands? They were looking for freedom, and the Netherlands had freedom. They had freedom of religion, as long as you weren't Catholic, that is. And it's partly because the Dutch people, and it's still the same way, I guess, they are pragmatic and they like the economy. So as long as people come and they behave and they contribute to the economy, they're fine. And they knew that the Jews coming from Spain and Portugal were businessmen and they had great contacts. They were doing coffee and they had diamond and a lot of trading. So they were very welcome. There were, of course, restrictions. They didn't have full rights for a long time. Synagogues were not allowed to be visible, or at least not have the entrance from the streets, which is why they are surrounded by other buildings. The Jews were not allowed in guilds, not even trade guilds. They were not allowed to be lawyers. They were not allowed to even be in several cities in the Netherlands. And until, for example, 200 years later, they were not allowed to spend the night even in cities like Utrecht, a big city. There were 3 synagogues already in an early stage in the 17th century, and they were forced to merge. I'll tell you a bit about why later. And then a bit later already, the Ashkenazi Jews also came from Eastern Europe. There were, of course, pogroms there. They were not safe. And they came because there was already an established Jewish community, but the society was pillarized, meaning that every religious group had their own infrastructure completely. They had their own schools, their own newspapers, their own hospitals, their own everything. And this was the case in the Netherlands until even the 70s of last century. So that means that Portuguese and the Ashkenazi Jews didn't mix well either. And one of the first things that happened, the first clash between the Jews and the Dutch people, happened on Simchat Torah for the Portuguese Jews. And now, going to set the mood a little bit. This is one of the pieces that is being sung on Simchat Torah in Amsterdam. Just a little bit. we can listen to this for a long time, I think. They are amazing singers. Of course, in the 16th, 17th century, women were also then not allowed to sing during the services as far as being a cantor. So they would also use the males for the female voices. In the 18th century, there was a whole opera on Esther, on Queen Esther. They have just found this opera recently, and it's being performed again in several places. And they also they use voices like these to play Queen Esther. And it was actually this opera was commissioned by the Amsterdam Portuguese community. So this is one of the tunes that we sing on Simchat Torah. Now, what happened is these are the benches that the Chatanim sit on. Simchat Torah is when we celebrate, when we finish a whole cycle of reading the Torah and start a new one. We have two grooms, one that ends the Torah and one that starts over again. And we have like a group of people that are walking like this. It's very formal, the Portuguese synagogue. You can see it in the top corner. And then a group of people like this walking the broom from his house to the synagogue was stopped and arrested by the people from the municipality. And they thought that they were Catholics. So they said, what are you doing here? They wanted to arrest them. And they said, well, it's Simchat Torah and we're celebrating, and, you know, the whole story. And they said, that's okay. But, you know, you can continue. And if you're going to pray, please also pray for us, pray for the city. And this is the Hanoten Teshuvah prayer, which is said in every synagogue, well, pretty much every synagogue in the world. And we pray that our city, that our country and that our government is going to be taking good care of us, but also that they will do well themselves. And the part about the city is in Portuguese, as all of the announcements are still in Portuguese actually in this community. And we are praying for the senhores burgomestre e magistrados of the Cidade de Amsterdam. And so we still do that. And this prayer is said every time before we read the Torah. And also the rest is for the king and for the queen and for their children and all the other descendants of the royal house of Orange. So it's something that's nice to know that a lot of these services and also old customs of the Portuguese synagogues are still intact. They're still there. So the history in very shortly, in a nutshell, the first Portuguese synagogue already was established in Holland in 1602. Then the Bet Chaim cemetery, which is still in use, in 1614, Spinoza's parents are buried there. Dotar, handing out dowries to poor children, 1615 already. They're still active. In this time, they give money to Jewish couples that when they get married, they get an allowance from them. Still active. Our library, 1616, still, also active. It's UNESCO World Heritage right now. In 1671, the big Ashkenazi synagogue was built, not in use anymore as a synagogue, but it's now a museum. And in 1675, the big Portuguese synagogue. It looks like a temple. The Jews were active in coffee, stock, banking, later in fabric and diamonds, and became more active in society. There were very, very rich Jews, and they even supported the royal family. They had very good connections with them. They were giving them loans, but still most of the people in the country, so also the Jews, they were poor. And more than 90% of the Jewish population didn't have money even to pay their membership fees. The Jewish population did grow, and in 1830 we had 46,000 Jews, and in 1930 111,000 in the whole country, majority of them living in Amsterdam. Amsterdam had about 6 million people living there, and almost a quarter of that was Jewish. So Amsterdam was really a very Jewish city. So what happened to Spinoza? Something you should know about this pillarized society is that the Jewish community was held responsible for everything all the Jews would do in the city. So if there was a Jewish person that was drunk or stealing something or doing anything wrong, the board members would be held responsible. This also included if people were saying things that the Christian people didn't like Spinoza, who would have a lot of opinions that the Christians didn't like. And this gave the community so much power. The board members had so much power. They didn't always want it, but they had it. And it grew into something, well, just how those centuries were. They were very repressive. Like a lot of people that had to take charge, and they used a lot of bans on a lot of people. It wasn't pretty. It really wasn't. It was medieval barbaric practices. But in the case of Spinoza, basically they just couldn't allow him to say the things he did without having punishments from the Christian municipality. So they had to ban him. Without this, they probably wouldn't have minded so much. And so they gave him a ban, and which was pretty normal actually back then. I don't think they were really appalled by his sayings, and there were some rabbis that also said things that were a bit likely to what he said, but he was just too much of a liability for the Jewish community not to to say goodbye to him in this case. This is also why they had to merge the three communities into one, simply because the government only wanted to have one community to talk to. There were two. There was one for the Portuguese and one for the Ashkenazim. Still, they didn't want more than one person responsible. Now, this is a map of our cemetery, which is also one of the most famous cemeteries in the world. It's in 1614. It's not in Amsterdam because it wasn't allowed to bury people in Amsterdam in that time. So they would walk 2 hours. They would carry the corpse like through the water, carried by horses on the side. It's still a really amazing cemetery. The parents of Spinoza were buried here, a lot of big rabbis, and also someone called, where is he? Samuel Palache. Samuel Palache. It's definitely worth having a session just about him, as he was a Jewish pirate. He was a Jewish pirate. He has an incredible life story, and he was connected to a lot of very famous people in that time. Very, very nice. And we have very special gravestones. The tombstones right now are just like this. This is one of the modern fields on the left, but you can see the older ones are incredible, and they include skulls and all kinds of symbolism that we don't know in Judaism anymore, but that was common in Spain and Portugal where they came from. So you have some really incredible tombstones as well to see there, a lot of history. And you can see here what it looks like from the air. After this talk, we're gonna upload the PDF into the chat, where you can see all of the sources and some of the websites that we've been using, so you can have another look after this. And this is Dotar. They are having the lots of all the members of children in here, and every year before or after Purim, they take lots, and the persons that are being elected, they get extra money when they get married at some point. It's very nice. This is more about what the synagogue looks like from the outside, from the inside, the board members' room. This is our logo. You can see the pelican with its three youngs. These are the three communities becoming one. And very, very accurate. The current logo for a long time has been the phoenix raising from its ashes. And unfortunately, this happened to us a lot. The first time, perhaps, after the second temple was destroyed. And then again, I mean, this is our story everywhere, unfortunately, but for the Spanish and Portuguese Jews, this was the Inquisition. For other Jews, for example, the Arab Jews, it was what happened between 1945 and the 70s. But this is for us. And then, unfortunately, after the Second World War, it happened again. We have to look to the phoenix rising from its ashes, and this time we're still not sure if it's gonna happen. But definitely after the Inquisition, this was the result. An incredible building. This synagogue was the biggest synagogue in the world for 200 years, 1,600 seats, attracted the biggest rabbis, huge community, center of the world. I'm going to show you now a bit about its library and its learnings and its treasures. This shows a bit of the wealth of the community. This is hundreds and hundreds of millions worth of treasures, and a lot of these things are still being used for festivals or for Shabbat. If you go there, you can still see them. They're being displayed now in the museum. really shows how incredible the community was doing back then. The first chief rabbi was Yitzhak Abu Ab de Fonseca. Abu Ab is actually hidden in here. If you read Hebrew, his name is hidden in the front door. And this is our library from 1616. It's a beautiful library. Everyone knows it. Just 2 weeks ago, our national or our local football club, they filmed a very nice video in here to just as a, how do you say, like a commercial for the next football game between a Dutch and a Portuguese club. It's not just a Jewish library with some Jewish books. This was a place of science for a long time, and there's many old manuscripts. There are secular books, books about math, shipbuilding, history. It's huge. Over 500 manuscripts and more than 30,000 printed books. And it wasn't just a library, it was a school. And this is where, in the 17th century, the biggest rabbis were teaching and were being educated. And this is being reported about by a lot of other big rabbis in the world. Amsterdam was famous for this. Amsterdam was famous for this. This is a bit too much to discuss for now, but they have a lot of books about everything in a lot of languages. You can just go to their website. You can check out their manuscripts. You can check out their Haggadah, the famous Amsterdam Haggadah, which was printed here. They also had one of the most active printing presses in the Jewish world in Amsterdam. You can just view them online, the Etz Chaim library. It survived the war, not so great. Actually, after the war, a lot of the books, they survived it during the war. They hid a lot of the stuff in the roof of the synagogue. And then afterwards, the community thought they were going to perish completely. They wouldn't be able to continue. They wouldn't have use for a library. So actually, they sent all the books to Israel. And then 20 years later, when the trauma ceased a little bit, they tried to get the books back, and they got about 70% of it back. Some famous rabbis from Holland, you may know them, maybe not. Tzvi Ashkenazi, or the Chacham Tzvi, is a really big rabbi in the Ashkenazi world. Menashe ben Israel is a hero that brought Jewish back to their religion in Amsterdam. And Yitzhak Abu Ab de Fonseca, as I said, he was the first chief rabbi of Amsterdam. But there was something else very interesting about what happened here with the Jewish community. In this time, there was someone claiming to be the Messiah. His name was Shabbatai Tzvi. You may have heard of him. And he claimed he was the Mashiach, and that everyone would go to Israel and then, celebrate the end of times. And people sold their houses, and there were rabbis that believed him, and there were rabbis that didn't believe him. But they worked together towards, going to Israel, and they believed, the Jewish people in Amsterdam, that the Mashiach would come even faster if they would establish Jewish communities all over the world. So the Amsterdam Jews, and Yitzhak Abu Ab de Fonseca was part of that, already in 1639, they established synagogues in the rest of the world. This is the first synagogue in the Americas. It's in Recife in Brazil, which was then a Dutch colony. And they created synagogues in New York and in Philadelphia, in the Caribbean, in London in 1701. And they are all miniature versions of the one in Amsterdam. And these were the same rabbis doing that. There was Chief Rabbi Abu Ab de Fonseca that started the first synagogue in the Americas, and they were the Spanish Portuguese Jews that started the Jewish communities in America. These are two synagogues in the Caribbean. You can see there's sand on the floor. Also, the one in Amsterdam has sand. There are several theories for it. One is just practical because of the woods, and it's less dirty and it's making less sound if you walk on it. Some say it reminds us of either the desert or the Inquisition, when the Jews had to be very cautious and quiet and meeting under, also in basements in Spain and Portugal. But you can see all the synagogues are beautiful. There's a lot of wood, and always the people are sitting towards each other. The bima or teba is at the front, the chazan singing over them. They're all very beautiful communities. There's about 30 of them in the world. Many of them are not really active anymore because of the Second World War. Actually, about Spinoza, I already told you what happened. It's just recently there was a big fight about this. I'm not sure if you've heard it. He went viral. An American professor named Yitzhak Melamed wanted to go to the synagogue and make a film about Spinoza's life. And he asked the rabbis of the community, of the Portuguese community, if he was allowed to film there. And they said no, which is, it's one thing, but they were also not so friendly about it. One of the rabbis sent him a letter saying that he was a heretic and basically said he could go to hell. And the professor then shared this letter online on Twitter. It was then shared thousands and thousands of times, and it became a huge deal in the national and international media. And it has led to firing the rabbi, and he's still trying to fight the community over this. So it's a huge mess. Yeah, just a huge mess. But he went viral. He's just still standing there. He went viral. I'm sure he thought it was funny. Now, we're in the 19th century by now. The Jewish community was growing. There was poverty, but as a community, we're doing great. They were the center of Judaism, huge synagogue, a lot of big rabbis. So basically, the community was doing well. They were all living here. And now the Jews are actually emancipating by this time. First of all, we had the diamonds and the trade unions. Diamond processing became popular. The Jews started to work there, and they became to organize themselves to get more rights because workers were not paid well. And Jewish men like both Ashkenazi and Portuguese, Henry Polak, Sam de Wolf, Mono de Miranda, they led the way. So this is when the Jews started to become active politically, and they created a movement for rights, for workers' rights, and these started to become the Labour Party, the later Labour Party of the Netherlands. And we became more visible in other parts too of the country. We became visible in theaters, sports, politics. And if you go to Amsterdam, and I hope every one of you will, many dozens of street names and buildings are named after Jews in Amsterdam. Then we go into the 1900s, when there was still a lot of poverty everywhere, and other changes were started by the Jews. First, for example, Aletta Jacobs, she was one of the first women, very, very famous Dutch women. She was the first female student. She had a doctor's degree at university. She fought for women's suffrage, for voting rights, and she started the first feminist wave. Another influence was that the Dutch language was influenced with many Yiddish words. This is from the Ashkenazi influence. And I have 2 pages full of examples, but let me tell you, I have a book here with 3,000 words that made it into the Dutch language. Some of them just the Amsterdam language, some of them are still very active. You can see the meaning of the word on the left, then the Dutch word, and then the Yiddish or Hebrew, modern Hebrew root and what it means. When people speak about the jail, they really just say bias, which comes from bayit. This is just how they speak in Holland. Geinig is a very normal name. Gabber for friend. These are really normal words. Just this one is really strange. Cheers, of course, l'chaim, to life. We know all of that, but in Dutch it's daar ga je, which isn't very similar. Daar ga je in Dutch actually means there you go. And it's basically that the Dutch people just thought it sounded like daar ga je, there you go, l'chaim, daar ga je. So that's why this became the Dutch way of saying l'chaim, there you go. And the second page, something you may not know is that Mokum, you can see it means Amsterdam. One of the names of Amsterdam is Mokum. Amsterdam has only 2 names, and one of them is Jewish. It comes from Makum, or Makum Aleph, the first city, their main city. It's Amsterdam. So when people speak about Mokum, they speak about Amsterdam. Yeah, there's thousands and thousands of words that make it into Dutch. And then we have politicians. This is the Sarfati Park on the Sarfati street with his bust. He was a Portuguese Jewish doctor and chemist and philanthropist, which someone told me is with PH, and a baker. And he did, for example, reform education, reform the health, reform our city development. And he started a lot of businesses in Amsterdam and Holland. He reforms economy, basically. He's right here. And we have a lot of Jewish mayors and Jewish politicians, Jewish European parliament members for Dutch parties. It's really incredible. Until the Second World War, basically the Jews, well, as I said, they made up 25% of the city, but they did more when it comes to like emancipating the community and bringing them forward. Abraham Tuschinski, Ashkenazi Jew, created this theater. He perished in the World War. He went to a camp. It was recently named the most beautiful theater by Time Out magazine. Still a beautiful theater. It's time for a video. I'm going to give you an impression of what Amsterdam looked like a few years before the war. So you can see a lot of Jewish street names. I'm going to select two little bits of what Amsterdam looked like on Friday in one of the quarters that were mostly Jewish. Around the synagogue, the Portuguese synagogue that I showed you, over 50% of the people living there were Jewish. You want to skip a little bit? So yeah, this is just before the Germans invaded Amsterdam. You can see it's a really long time ago because people were not socially distancing back then. And I don't really want to spend too much time on the Second World War. Everybody knows what happened. We had Anne Frank, of course, in the Netherlands, but we had 80% murdered, which is one of the highest populations of Jews that were killed in all of Europe after Poland. And the Portuguese Jews had some sort of, I don't know, like a plan, and they thought they could use the rules of the Nazis to sort of evade being deported, but it didn't work. And of the Portuguese community, 90% was killed. So they started with 4,000 families, and after the war, only 400 families were left. And actually, in 70 years, the numbers didn't grow at all. So yeah, everybody knows this. We can have another session about it sometimes, but yeah, everybody knows about the atrocities of the war. And the reason why it was such a high percentage in the Netherlands, it's a combination of the Dutch being very pragmatic, caring more about welfare and safety, and not so much about the population that was still a bit different. The ideas of the Germans were cut very easily by the Dutch people here. They didn't resist much, and also our administration system was impeccable, very good administration. So everybody was just very easily to find. My grandparents survived the war. On the one side, they were just in hiding. One had a fake passport, and they were in a place where one of them could even be outside. The others were just in hiding. For my mom's side, they were in camps. They had a British passport for some reason, and they worked for an organization called Philips, a very famous company, and they tried to take good care of their own people. So they made it until largely into the war. They were still doing quite okay, but still a few days before the war ended, they were deported to Auschwitz. they were put on the train, and they were gonna be killed there for sure. So what they did on the train, everyone who still had some belongings, they took everything together, and they bribed the conductor, and they told him to just drive as slow as he could, and with the last things they had, and this is what he did. So he drove to Auschwitz so slowly that the war ended before he made it there, and that's why I'm still here. To give you an idea of what Jewish Holland looked like, we spoke mostly about Amsterdam and the Portuguese community there, a bit about Ashkenazim. All of these cities and villages had Jewish communities. If you go to the website that's part of the PDF, you can click on these, and you can see how much Jewish presence there was every couple of years. And after the Second World War, pretty much all of these just perished, and some of them were only just there so they was just big enough to be able to take care of the cemetery. There are still, though, there are some communities left, but I would say outside the 4 biggest cities, it's nothing really to talk about. I'm going to tell you a bit about what the community looks like now. We started at 5 past, so I think I have like 7-8 minutes left, and then we'll do the questions. So first of all, after the war, life for Dutch Jews was still horrible. The war was over, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't anti-Semitism. There was no support. A lot of people didn't have any belongings anymore. Sometimes they didn't have, or often they didn't have their passports. They became stateless. Their houses were robbed, or they couldn't even get back into them. If they were unlucky, a lot of cities, including Amsterdam, would give them a fine for not paying taxes for the years that they were deported. So they're still fighting for justice. Actually, even today, they're still fighting to get art back and all these things. But they try to make something of it. It does, of course, there was also no psychological help. So there was just a lot of trauma. It really changed the mindset. And I can only say that even today, after 77 years, the results of the mindset are still there. The people here, especially the older generations, but even many people my age, they're living in a post-war community, and they're not really focused on the future. So some about our socio-economic trends. About 140,000 Jews were living in Holland before the war, and then afterwards about 30,000 came back. Because of a lot of immigration, Israeli people coming from Israel, the numbers are sort of the same as 77 years ago, but we didn't grow. This is 37,000 Jews are the people with the Jewish mother in Holland, and the people with the Jewish father. Half of them lives in Amsterdam, half of them outside. Something that I think is very, well, a sad number. 16% is affiliated with the Jewish organization, which means over 80% is not affiliated with any Jewish organization. And we know that about 85% of the Jews comes home with a non-Jewish partner. So it's not looking that great. We have infrastructure in Amsterdam, and really I hope that all of you are going to visit Amsterdam, and if you do, we'll welcome you, and you'll have a great time, and there's plenty of stuff to do here. You can live very pleasantly as a Jew in Holland. Only in Amsterdam we have 15 synagogues, and there's about 15 synagogues outside Amsterdam as well. Mostly are Ashkenazi and Orthodox, but we have a conservative synagogue, a Reform one, 3 Sephardic ones. We have day schools, kollel, we have rabbis, kosher restaurants, shops, sports clubs, student housing, all kinds of social, cultural, and religious communities. In the Israeli community, we have youth movements. So really, we have a lot of very nice infrastructure. And this is mostly just the 20% of the people that are connected. They are doing all these things. Still, I don't think I know all of the Jews in Holland. So it's still quite sizable. We have some new initiatives, some new synagogues, some new organizations. And as I said, Bendigamos is a spin-off of the Esnoga. The Esnoga had 400 families after the war, and right now they have under 500 members. And mostly it's because just after, and this is true for most of the Jewish organizations here, they're living in the past, and it's so hard, and I cannot blame them if 90% of your community died, to say, you know what, let's build a nice future and let's be attractive and let's see what we can do to really build up the community, and they're just not ready yet. And because of this, people from my age, they didn't feel attracted to the synagogue. It's very dark, very heavy, very rigid. There's no joy, and so they were not able to keep my generation in, and they also were not really willing to give up their seats or to change anything. So after 12 years trying from within and seeing how the community is just on its way to a sure death, we decided to make a spin-off with the younger generation. To give you an idea, on Shabbat morning in the big Portuguese synagogue, there's 15 people on average from the community, and we started from scratch. So we can keep up the traditions and make the community grow again, mostly just to bring Jews together and create a community, more than just being a religion, but being a people again, just having fun, to celebrate, share, and develop our Jewish identity, to create a place where we could do that safely and with joy. And on an average Shabbat, we get between 80 and 100 people with an average of 30, which makes us already the most successful synagogue in the country. In attendance, we're second, and we do much more than just services. We have a wide range of events. On the right, you see a part of my students with the sushi workshop. And on the left, this is how we got through COVID, by having synagogue services outdoors. This is a barbecue on the left, and our first COVID party, a picture from that on the right. This is what it looked like, our building that we rent from the beginning. Pouring party on the right. I teach 15 bar mitzvah students a year. You can see that on the right top. This is how we had our first Yom Kippur during COVID. Just a little bit. So obviously there was we had a maximum of 30 people, like all synagogues, but because we were outside, we could have 50. And this was outdoors. This was after the Yom Kippur ended, so just the last bit. And you can see the average age is low. On the right, we have our Hanukkah party from just a few weeks ago, and a Hanukkah workshop for children making their own Chanukiah. To give you an idea of what we're doing to really revive our community, we have teen leadership courses on the right after the Bar Mitzvah. We have, this was 130 people on our Rosh Hashanah picnic. Someone that just lives in the building saw a lot of Jews and decided to take a picture and send it to us. This is a ping pong tournament that we held a few months ago on Shabbat afternoon. And the non-Jewish person that keeps the building, he took a picture by accident, but at least I can see can show you what it looks like on Shabbat. This is just one of the rooms that we were using. So I am really, I see there is a lot of potential. There is still 30,000 plus Jews around Amsterdam, and the new generation really wants to rebuild the old glory that you've seen, make Amsterdam at least a center of Judaism again. We have all the heritage. We have a very rich culture. We have beautiful liturgy. We just don't have the mindsets in the older generation and the energy to really start anew. But we're really happy to see that things are moving. We're not sure we can make it because we can feel we're going against time. Every year, the community has 2 or 3% less members, and we can only, do so much when the rest of the community is still backwards. It's going really, really slowly, but we're making a change, and we hope that you will be, how do you say that, a witness of our growth, and that you'll come to Amsterdam, and when you do, we'll welcome you and show you our community and the rest of the Jewish community in Holland. Please stay in contact. I'm very thankful for your time and to share our story with you and my thoughts about the future. And contact me, send me a message, email me, stay in touch, and I'm ready for all your questions right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Nachshon, for this incredibly informative presentation. A lot of people commented on how really, really fascinating and incredible this presentation was. So thank you so much. We do have some questions that came in during the presentation, and there might be more that come into the chat box, but let's start with what has already come in. First of all, your community, bendigamos, what does that word mean?
Okay, so the Portuguese Jews were not allowed to learn Hebrew for a long time or study the Torah. Like in many parts of history, the Jews were not allowed. And so they had some prayers in Spanish and Portuguese because it was the only way they could keep their traditions. And bendigamos is a song, actually. It's a summary of the blessing after the meal, the grace after a meal. And bendigamos is the word itself is a translation from the words hava nevarech. Basically, let's bless the Lord together. Let's sing together. So it shows Sephardic. It shows our heritage. It's a song. It's a fun song that we sing. It's our anthem, so to speak. And it speaks about togetherness. And so yeah, that's the name we chose for our community, and that's what it means.
Thank you. There was a question about some terminology like Sephardim and Spanish and Portuguese. Can they be used interchangeably? Is one a subset of another? What's the overlap?
Okay, great. So basically in the Jewish history, there was a group of Jews that moved from Israel into Eastern Europe at some point. They are called the Ashkenazi Jews because Ashkenaz or Germany was the center of their rabbis and their decisions, and then the other part, the Mediterranean part, was the Sephardic part. The Sephardic because it's Sfarad, Spain, where Maimonides came from, and this is where their Jewish traditions were developed and based. And basically everyone that stems from Eastern Europe and those communities are called Ashkenazi, and the other ones are called Sephardi. So Sephardic is everyone that has their basis in the rabbinic tradition of Spain. And the Spanish and Portuguese today is a specific brand or branch within the Sephardic tradition because they have their specific culture and subculture and liturgy, but it has a lot of overlap with the rest of the Sephardic world. So S&P is a subset of the Sephardim.
Thank you for clarifying. Did the Portuguese synagogue suffer any damage during World War II?
No, fortunately, there was no damage at all, which is a miracle in itself. And the reason is threefold. There was, on one hand, it was Portuguese, and Portugal was sort of neutral during the war, so the Germans may not want to upset the Germans like this. It was a very famous building. Secondly, they actually wanted to maybe make a museum out of this afterwards, the Germans, so they kept it. And in the meantime, they wanted to make a fire station of it. And one of the Jewish members there said something, gave them some sort of arguments, which made them not want to use it as a fire station in the meantime. And so it survived mostly, actually. And all the treasures and the almost 72 Torah or the 72 Torah scrolls, they kept them in the roof, mostly in the roof of the building. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. There was a question about the resistance during the war, the Dutch resistance in the Jewish community, and the connection, if there was any connection there.
Well, the resistance of the Jews wasn't that, there was some resistance, but generally, actually, the resistance wasn't so big. I cannot say it was, there was that much resistance in the Netherlands compared to in other countries. More and more, there are stories that we hear there was some resistance and there were some strikes. Generally, it wasn't that great. There was some help, but there was more non-resistant than resistance, basically. We had some stories, but the story of the Netherlands is not a story of resistance. The country itself resisted only 5 days when the Germans attacked them. And of course, they tried. You know, we didn't have all the information back then. So there were plenty of people that thought it was just going to be working camps and it was just going to be slavery, it was going to be like slavery. They didn't know they were going to be destroyed completely. So that's also one of the reasons why there wasn't that much resistance. And it was just difficult. Like all the organizations were taken over by the Nazis. They couldn't trust anyone. So it wasn't easy to resist. People tried, there was some, but it's not the main story of the war. Oh, yeah.
Is changing topics for a moment, is there an organization or a book that you could suggest for people who are going to be visiting and they would like to focus on Jewish history and Jewish and important sites in Amsterdam? And along those lines, someone mentioned that they will be there in May and would love to come to your synagogue if that was possible. So if you could tell us how they might do that.
Yes, everyone is very welcome in my synagogue. The name of our synagogue is Bendigamos. We have a Facebook page, Bendigamos Amsterdam. We have a website, an email, everything. Like so, you can just contact us, and then we'll help you get a nice stay here, and also to help you get through Amsterdam, find a place to stay, kosher food, like all these things. We're always trying to offer a welcome place to everyone, also to the Dutch Jews, and also to all of our guests. And a few years ago, there was something created. It's called a canon, not a weapon, but a canon, like a summary of the Jewish history. And they also created a book of that. So I can really recommend that. In like 100 lemmas, they are really sharing the most important parts of Jewish history up till today. They created a book of it, also a website of it. I think it's also an English version. If I could recommend one thing, I think that would be it. The Dutch Jewish